I, 29F, had been with my boyfriend Jack, 30M, for 2 years now, and 2 months ago, we took the big step of moving in together. Our relationship started at a mutual friend's barbecue where we bonded over our shared love of 90s sitcoms and terrible dad jokes. From the beginning, Jack was different from anyone I'd dated before, kind, attentive, and genuinely interested in building a future together. The past 2 years have been amazing, and moving in together seemed like the natural next step. Everything was going great until I discovered something that's been weighing heavily on my mind. Jack has a younger sister, Emily, 26, and a 3-year-old niece, and they're an incredibly tight-knit trio. I knew Jack cared deeply about them. He'd often spend weekends at their place or have them over for dinner. What I didn't realize until we moved in together was just how much he financially supports them. To my complete surprise, Jack pays their rent in full every single month. Emily and her daughter live in a modest 1-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from us. While the rent isn't outrageous by city standards, it's still a significant monthly expense that Jack shoulders entirely. Emily doesn't have a traditional job. Her explanation to Jack was that working a regular job wouldn't cover daycare costs for her daughter, let alone their other living expenses. She does small jobs here and there, walking dogs for neighbors, selling baked goods at local markets, and occasionally helping friends with their kids, but it's barely enough to cover groceries. The situation with Emily started about 3 years ago. She was married to this guy named Tom who, by all accounts, seemed perfect on paper. He had a stable job in finance, treated Emily well, and everyone thought they were the ideal couple. They had a beautiful wedding that Jack helped pay for, and everything seemed perfect. But things took a dark turn after their daughter was born. Tom started staying out late, making excuses about work meetings and client dinners. Money started disappearing from their joint account, and Emily would find receipts from casinos in his coat pockets. Eventually, she discovered he had a severe gambling addiction. He'd not only blown through their savings but had also taken out multiple loans and maxed out several credit cards. When Emily confronted him about it, he disappeared. Just packed a bag one day while she was at her prenatal checkup and vanished, leaving her 7 months pregnant and drowning in debt. That's when Jack stepped in. I can understand why. Their backstory makes it even more complicated. Jack and Emily lost their parents in a car accident when Emily was 18 and Jack was 22. They were coming back from Emily's high school graduation when a drunk driver hit them. Jack had just graduated college and was starting his first job as an engineer. Instead of focusing on his career, he had to become both brother and parent to Emily. He helped her through community college, supported her emotionally through the grief, and basically put his life on hold to make sure she was okay. So when Tom abandoned Emily, Jack didn't hesitate to help. It started small, helping with groceries, covering a few bills here and there. But as Emily's pregnancy progressed and the extent of Tom's gambling debts became clear, Jack's financial involvement grew. He started paying their rent, utilities, and even bought all the baby supplies. His plan was to help until Emily got back on her feet, but 3 years later, nothing has changed. I discovered all this because Jack and I recently had a serious conversation about our financial future. We were discussing savings goals and how we'd split expenses, and that's when I learned that Jack has absolutely no savings. Not a penny. This floored me because he's a successful engineer at a good firm, making well above average salary. When I pressed him about it, he finally opened up about just how much he gives to Emily every month. Between their rent, utilities, and other essentials, plus helping with the gambling debts Tom left behind, Jack's entire paycheck is gone by mid-month. Last week, we were talking about possibly buying a house together in the next year or two. Jack seemed excited about the idea until we started discussing down payments and mortgages. That's when reality hit hard. He can't contribute anything because every spare penny goes to Emily and his niece. When I brought this up, suggesting that maybe Emily could start working towards financial independence, Jack got defensive. He said I couldn't understand because I didn't grow up without parents. He talked about how Emily and his niece are his only family, and he can't abandon them like everyone else has. I tried explaining that supporting family doesn't mean sacrificing your entire future. I suggested that maybe we could help Emily create a plan to become more independent, job training programs, education, or even just a timeline for reducing her dependence on Jack. But he shut down completely. Emily isn't even trying to improve her situation. She posts daily on Instagram about her baking and craft projects, but there's no mention of looking for steady work or trying to build a career. The most frustrating part is that Emily seems to take Jack's support for granted. She'll call him at all hours asking for extra money for things like new clothes for her daughter or supplies for her baking projects. If he hesitates even slightly, she brings up their parents, saying things like Mom and Dad would want you to help us or we're the only family you have left. I love Jack and I admire how much he cares for his family. But I'm worried about our future together. How can we build a life when he's carrying this enormous financial burden? What happens when we want to start our own family? Will Emily's needs always come before ours? Jack is letting his sister take advantage of his guilt and grief over their parents' death, and I don't know how to make him see it without seeming like I'm attacking his only family. Am I being unreasonable here? Should I just accept that this is how things will always be? I want to be understanding, but I also don't want to sign up for a lifetime of being second place to Emily's financial needs. Update 1: Things have gotten significantly more complicated since my last post. After our initial conversation about finances, Jack and I had several more discussions about the situation. I tried approaching the topic differently each time, being as understanding as possible while still expressing my concerns about our future. These conversations usually ended with Jack getting defensive about Emily and me feeling frustrated and unheard. The real problems started last weekend. I was doing some deep cleaning of our apartment while Jack was at Emily's, helping her fix something in her kitchen. While organizing his desk drawers, something he asked me to do weeks ago, I found a stack of papers stuffed in the back. At first, I thought they were just old work documents, but as I started sorting them, my heart sank. They weren't just rent receipts for Emily's apartment, there were credit card statements showing massive debt. Jack hasn't just been supporting Emily with his income, he's been putting thousands of dollars of expenses on credit cards. The statements showed balances on 3 different cards totaling over $25,000. The expenses were a mix of Emily's rent, utility bills, grocery store charges, and various online shopping purchases. Some of the charges were for things like designer children's clothes, toys, and even spa appointments. I felt sick to my stomach. All those times Jack said he couldn't afford to go out to dinner or take a weekend trip with me, he was maxing out credit cards for Emily's lifestyle. When Jack got home that evening, I confronted him about the statements. At first, he was angry that I had found them, accusing me of snooping through his things. But after I reminded him that he had asked me to organize his desk, he broke down completely. Through tears, he finally told me the full story. Emily's ex-husband Tom hadn't just left them with normal debt, he had taken out multiple personal loans in Emily's name before disappearing. The loans totaled almost $40,000, and with high interest rates, Emily had no way to pay them off. Jack has been helping Emily pay these loans off secretly, putting minimum payments on his credit cards to keep up with everything. He didn't tell me because he was embarrassed and afraid I'd think less of him. But what really got me was learning that Emily knew about these hidden credit card debts all along. She's been actively using this situation to manipulate Jack whenever he tries to talk about reducing his financial support. I started paying more attention to Emily's behavior after this revelation. She has a pattern of guilting Jack that I hadn't fully noticed before. When he mentions being tight on money, she brings up their parents, saying things like Mom and Dad would be so disappointed if you let your niece go hungry, or you're all we have left of our family, who else can we turn to? She knows exactly which emotional buttons to push to keep Jack's support flowing. My curiosity got the better of me, and I started looking more closely at Emily's social media accounts. What I found made my blood boil. While claiming she couldn't afford basic necessities without Jack's help, she's been living quite a comfortable life. In the past 3 months alone, she's taken 2 weekend trips to nearby tourist spots, bought several new outfits, which she proudly displays on Instagram, and even got a new iPhone. Her posts are full of brunches at trendy cafes and shopping halls, all while Jack is drowning in debt to support her basic needs. When I showed Jack the evidence of Emily's spending habits, he was visibly shocked but still made excuses for her. He said the trips were probably gifts from friends, that she deserves to have some nice things in life after everything she's been through. I couldn't believe he was still defending her after seeing the proof of her deception. The breaking point came yesterday. I was in our home office working, I work remotely, and Jack was in the kitchen doing dishes while talking to Emily on speakerphone. He probably thought I couldn't hear their conversation over my work calls, but I heard everything. Emily was complaining about me, saying I was trying to come between them and their family bond. She told Jack he needed to handle me before I ruined their family dynamic, suggesting that my presence in his life was threatening their relationship. The most disturbing part was when she started talking about my family background. She said things like she comes from a perfect little family with both parents, she can't possibly understand what we've been through, and maybe you should reconsider living with someone who's clearly not family material. She even had the audacity to suggest that Jack should start looking for someone more understanding of family obligations. Jack didn't defend me. He just listened and made noncommittal noises while she tore me apart. I waited until he finished his call and tried to talk to him about what I'd heard, but he brushed it off, saying Emily was just stressed and didn't mean anything by it. When I pressed him about the financial deception and Emily's manipulation, he shut down completely and left to get some air. He didn't come back for hours. I'm at my wit's end. Jack is a wonderful person who's being taken advantage of by his sister, but he either can't or won't see it. The debt is bad enough, but the emotional manipulation and the way Emily is trying to drive a wedge between us is worse. I love Jack, but I'm starting to wonder if this situation will ever change. How can we build a future together when he's being emotionally blackmailed by his sister and drowning in debt to support her lifestyle? I'm considering taking a step back from this relationship, but the thought of leaving Jack when he's being so clearly taken advantage of breaks my heart. Update 2. I didn't expect to be writing this update so soon, but things have taken a dramatic and shocking turn. Remember how I mentioned Emily's ex-husband Tom and his gambling addiction? Well, he's back in the picture, and the story we all believed was a carefully crafted lie. Last week, I received an anonymous email. At first, I almost deleted it thinking it was spam, but the subject line caught my attention: the truth about Emily and Tom. The email contained dozens of documents, photos, and screenshots that turned everything we knew upside down. Emily and Tom had never really separated. The gambling addiction was partially true, but they had used it as a cover to scam Jack out of thousands of dollars. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank statements showed regular transfers from Emily's account to Tom's over the past 3 years. There were recent photos of them together at various locations, including a beach resort just last month. Text messages between them discussed their long-term plan. They were using Jack's money to save for a house in another state while pretending to be separated. The most damning evidence was a series of email exchanges between Emily and Tom where they openly discussed their scheme. They had planned everything meticulously. Tom would pretend to abandon Emily while she was pregnant, playing on Jack's protective instincts. Emily would act devastated and helpless, knowing Jack would step in to help. They even discussed how to maintain the lie long-term, with Emily coaching Tom on what to say if he ever ran into any of their old friends. I sat on this information for several days, struggling with how to handle it. I knew Jack would be devastated, but he deserved to know the truth. I spent hours organizing the evidence, trying to present it in a way that would be undeniable. Finally, I showed everything to Jack one evening after dinner. His initial reaction was exactly what I expected. He accused me of fabricating everything out of jealousy or spite. He called me manipulative and said I was trying to destroy his relationship with his sister. But as he went through the documents, his anger turned to disbelief, and then to a kind of quiet devastation that was heartbreaking to watch. The photos hit him particularly hard. There were pictures of Emily, Tom, and their daughter at various locations over the past 3 years, places Emily had told Jack she was visiting with friends. There they were, playing happy family while Jack worked himself to the bone and racked up debt to support them. Jack confronted Emily the next day. He went to her apartment unannounced, and to everyone's surprise, Tom was there. Emily didn't even try to deny anything. She broke down and admitted everything, though her confession felt more like justification than remorse. She talked about how hard it was growing up without parents, how she and Tom just wanted to build a better life for their daughter, and how they knew Jack would help if he thought she was alone and struggling. The hardest part for Jack wasn't even the financial betrayal, it was learning how his niece had been used as a pawn in their scheme. Emily would often use her daughter as leverage, knowing Jack would do anything for her. She would send photos of his niece looking sad or telling stories about how they couldn't afford new clothes or toys, all while living quite comfortably off Jack's money and their own savings. The extent of their deception became clearer as more details emerged. The gambling debts were real, but they were nowhere near as massive as Emily had claimed. Tom had lost about $15,000, not the $40,000 they told Jack. They had already paid off most of it themselves but kept the story going to maintain Jack's financial support. All those credit cards Jack maxed out trying to help them? That money went straight into their savings account for their future house. What really broke Jack was discovering that some of his friends had known the truth. A couple of them had seen Emily and Tom together but didn't say anything, thinking it wasn't their place to get involved. They assumed Jack knew and was just helping his sister despite everything. Their silence had allowed the deception to continue for years. I found Jack crying in our bedroom last night, looking at old family photos. He kept asking how he could have been so blind, how he didn't see all the signs that were right in front of him. The sister he'd sacrificed everything for, the one person he thought he could always trust, had been lying to him for years, using their parents' memory and his love for his niece to manipulate him. Update 3. The aftermath of Emily's deception hit Jack harder than anyone expected. The day after confronting Emily, he cut off all financial support and blocked her number. It turned out that she and Tom had saved nearly $50,000 from Jack's support over the years, so they weren't in any real financial trouble. This only made the betrayal worse, knowing that they had been stockpiling his money while watching him struggle with credit card debt. Jack fell into a deep depression for several weeks. He would spend hours just sitting and staring at nothing, or going through old family photos from before their parents died. The weight of the betrayal crushed him. Emily wasn't just his sister, she was his last connection to their parents, the person he'd restructured his entire life around after their death. Finding out that she had exploited that bond for years broke something in him. The financial cleanup has been messy. Jack is working with a debt consolidation company to handle the credit card bills. He had to sell his car and pick up extra engineering projects on weekends to start making a dent in the debt. It's going to take years to recover financially, and that's assuming everything goes according to plan. Emily and Tom moved away last month. They bought the house they were saving for in Colorado, using the money they'd accumulated from Jack's support. The real kicker came when Emily posted photos of their new home on social media, calling it their fresh start and talking about how sometimes you have to leave the past behind to move forward. She even had the nerve to post a long message about how family sometimes drifts apart and how people change, painting herself as the victim in the situation. She tried reaching out to Jack several times before they moved. First with text messages full of excuses and half-hearted apologies, then with emotional voicemails about their parents and family bonds. When those didn't work, she sent a letter through one of our mutual friends, trying to explain her side of things. She wrote about feeling lost after their parents' death, about how the plan with Tom started small and spiraled out of control. Jack burned a letter without reading past the first paragraph. Our relationship has changed too. While Jack finally acknowledges that I was right about Emily all along, there's an undercurrent of tension between us now. He's become incredibly wary of trusting anyone, even me sometimes. He questions every financial decision obsessively, afraid of being taken advantage of again. The other day, he got suspicious because I offered to pay for dinner, wondering if I was pitying him or had some hidden agenda. The hardest part is watching him struggle with his relationship with his niece. Emily sends him videos of her occasionally from their new home, and you can see how much it tears him apart. He loves that little girl, but seeing her now only reminds him of how she was used as a tool in their manipulation. Jack and I are still together, but things are different. Our plans for buying a house are on indefinite hold while he works on his debt. He's more cautious now, especially with money, and sometimes I catch him looking at me with this worried expression, like he's waiting for the other shoe to drop. Sometimes I wonder if our relationship can survive the aftermath of all this betrayal and deception. The Jack I fell in love with, the optimistic, trusting, generous man who would do anything for family, is still in there somewhere. But he's buried under layers of hurt and betrayal, and I don't know if he'll ever fully resurface.